see your balls.
Can it cover?
I have a little bit of grajo.
All right, is it on? Nad's covered.
Hi, my name is Tracy, and I've been living in Cabarete since 2010.
And you know me, Mario Fama, RD. Yo soy blanco, pero no soy banco. But today, I work in real estate, Crest Group Dominicana. How you doing?
So, today, I wanted to talk about homeowners associations.
Yay!
Yay.
Everyone's favorite.
Everyone's favorite, because there's always one, right, in every homeowners association.
I don't think they realize sometimes when they call us here and they're looking for these gated communities that have all these amenities, these are all homeowners and associations.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, I don't want any of that. And I'm like, but you want the amenities? Yes, but I don't want it. No.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about it for two reasons. Number one, I've listed a lot of developments on Kite Beach. There's some small ones, there's some big ones. I've also bought three properties within condo associations. Mm-hmm. And I have been a proxy as far as voting for many homeowners associations within Kite Beach. So I know a lot about them. I have a lot of experience in the functionings of a homeowners association.
The fun functions.
The fun functionings. And I just wanted to make sure that we discuss a couple of those topics so that when people are buying within a complex, they know their rights. And yeah, they know their rights.
And she's the expert on the rights.
Yeah, I have fought two major wars. Let's just say this isn't to scare anybody, because if you live anywhere, I don't know, I'm not European or anything, but I will say in the United States, at least if you live in the United States and you have a homeowners association, like I said, there's always one. So you will know what I mean. It doesn't mean that it's a bad thing. It just means that you have to prepare yourself.
Correct.
So yeah, I've had two homeowners association wars. And I have one.
And also, like, not only just homeowners association, because I think, at least like the way I think about it from the States is HOA is usually when it's a house, right? But then when you have a building, you either, I'm from New York where we had a lot of co-ops, so you have your maintenance there, everything rolled into one. But there's common charges to a condominium, yep. And then you have your condo board, the same as a homeowners association. I think an HOA though tends to be sometimes more like a co-op in New York, where they have a lot more, like the HOA has a lot more control. Because I see people online all the time in the United States complaining about their HOAs. They seem to be very controlled like a co-op. And a co-op board, those of you guys that are from New York, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, but I think in a condo you have a little bit more freedom sometimes.
I think, well, I've never owned anything that would have been in a co-op or a homeowners association anywhere else. But I think that the important part is that you need to read your bylaws before you buy so that you know what you're getting into. You also need to make sure that you read the condo law that comes from the Dominican Republic, which is the umbrella over the condo laws or the bylaws. And then one extra thing that I found out in one of the wars that I fought was the declaration. And the declaration is essentially part of the bylaws. But for some reason, nobody talks about this declaration, and it can have pertinent information within it. So it's good to know all three pieces of the puzzle.
So I'll tell you something. I was having this conversation with my partner, because if you guys know, we also have a law firm in-house. Shameless plug. Martinez and Cressman, do legal shield, call me now. So I was talking to him, and we were talking about things about attorneys. And he said, Mario, you do realize, he said, that using an attorney to purchase a property, and I actually didn't even mention this earlier, but it's funny, that you do realize that Dominicans in general, when they bought property over the years before, they never use an attorney. Nobody pays an attorney. Because we were discussing costs, what it costs to buy a property, it would sell property with an attorney. And it's more of a thing with expats right now. And also with like the Americanized Dominicans, the Europeanized Dominicans that have gone abroad. They got, up to, people like in Santo Domingo, Santiago, Mao, Moca, they're like, I know, pay 1% for a lawyer. No. Right. They're just like, no, my broker said it's very good, or they bought through a friend or whatever. Mm-hmm. And, you guys, I don't know if you guys, how much people know about like the real DR, but these issues that you have with like homeowners associations, with your condo, with your property, they're not unique to expat areas. Everybody here goes through shit if they don't do their due diligence. And historically, people here do not do due diligence because they don't want to spend the money on an attorney. Yeah. I remember one time when I first opened up my Santiago office years back, and I was talking to one of my people that work with me there, and hardcore Santiago person their whole life. And I was like, yeah, these, the lawyers charge 1%. And she was like, oh my God, que caro. Like, they were like, oh my, like to them, that's a lot of money. Yeah. So that's why, like, when you talk about like people not looking at the declaration and all that, it's not customary. They don't bring it up because so very few people look at that, because Dominican culture is like, I ain't paying for a lawyer if I don't have to. Did I have a car accident? Did I have a criminal case? If not, I'm not paying for a lawyer.
Yeah, well, you want to, in our case as being expats or immigrants, whatever you want to call, I don't know what the right word is these States.
Exigent.
Exigent. You want to make sure that you head off any potential problems up front that can cost you more money in the long run. And by that, I mean that if you're traveling back and forth and you have an issue that arises where you have to go to court because of something that you didn't know about in your bylaws or whatever, plane tickets can be expensive if you don't want to spend it on vacation and you're coming back for court,
I agree.
So up front, it's just good to know your rights. As I said, there are 3 pieces to the puzzle: the Dominican law, the bylaws, and the declaration. And you just want to make sure all these documents are going to be in Spanish. If they're not in Spanish, you want to get your hands on the Spanish version to make sure that you have the registered and stamped version of your bylaws and the declaration, and then you can translate it. Because you do want to understand what it says, but you also want to know that everything in this country that's done in any legal capacity is going to start off in Spanish.
Exactly. And you also want to make sure that, there's certain complexes, not as much here, but I've seen places where they don't allow Airbnb, they don't allow anything under 3 months. You want to look at the bylaws. Do they allow pets? Or you want to know what you're getting yourself into based on the type of property that you're looking to buy. And this is why I never recommend people here buy without an attorney. Like I said, I'm from New York, people buy with an attorney, and have your attorney explain to you the bylaws, explain to you the rules of wherever you're going to buy. So many times there's a saying here, Cabarete, people want to save money. And I've seen this in expats also. Oh, I'm not spending money on an attorney. And I got to tell you, what I've seen experience is a lot of people bought pre-construction, right? Mm-hmm. And they have issues. But when we look at those issues, they even talk to my partner, we're like, yo, loco. Like they just kind of, the guy said this, and they just put money down. They don't read any paperwork. Yeah. They don't view these people, not always, obviously, but a lot of times when you see people complaining about what they purchase here, to you, meaning the public, their friends, family, they're not going to tell you the stupid shit they did.
Right.
They're not going to be like, man, I just signed something without looking. I put money because the payment plan was fine and the renderings look really nice and I didn't even really look into it. Then they're ashamed to tell you what they did. But when they come to look for another attorney to help them, they do explain those things to us. And my business partner, I sometimes I'm like, wow, how did you sign this? Oh no, because my broker said, and I mean, I'm a broker too, but don't take my word. I'm the first one to tell you, do not take my word for the real estate part of it. But when it comes to doing due diligence, you should have your attorney, you should have an attorney you trust and take their word. And if they're telling you, look, this is like that, and it doesn't work for you, then don't get involved into it.
Well, anyways, I bought some properties and my real estate agent never mentioned to me anything about bylaws. So it wasn't even on my radar until it became a problem.
Most don't know, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I would say that this isn't something that's, I don't know. I mean, I don't know every real estate agent in the world, but I can just tell you in my properties it wasn't discussed and it eventually became an issue. And I wish I would have known up front. And in all the cases that I had, it worked out to my advantage, but it could certainly work out to your disadvantage if you were not paying attention to what you were signing. Some things to know about your bylaws, I would say, well, first thing is that when it comes to the Dominican law, it's pretty general. It has some constructs that talks about what you can and cannot do when you're creating bylaws, and it obviously is the king of the laws. But your bylaws are going to be really nailing down all of the things within your complex.
It's kind of comes down like this.
Yeah, exactly. So, even though you have the Dominican law, it's not going to tell you if you can have dogs. It's not gonna lay out these particular things that are gonna be in your bylaws. What are some of the things? Well, some things that you can't change are the bylaws. So you can't vote out anything that is in the bylaws. You need 100% vote to change any bylaw.
And that's almost impossible. I mean, that's impossible. I've owned property here and everywhere. Getting 100%. I used to represent sponsors on boards, on co-op boards in New York, which is going the same thing you have the proxy. And I can tell you, trying to get 50% of the people to agree on something is a shit show.
Well, yeah, and that brings us to another thing, right? Where if we're talking about 50%, you were saying when we were just pre-discussing what we're going to put in this video, that maybe you don't want to get involved in a complex if there is a majority owner.
Yeah, I've had 2 instances, and I'm not even going to go back into all my experiences in New York where the sponsor was kind of like the developer or whoever converted the building to co-op or condo, where they own the majority of the building. I've had this in New York, but up here in this country, I used to own a property where it was like that, and after I bought the property, they made all the maintenance, let's say $200 for every unit. And I'm like, but it's supposed to be a price per square meter. How am I paying the same as a bigger 1-bedroom, as a 2-bedroom, as a bigger 2-bedroom, as whatever, 3-bedroom? And I was like, that's not fair. And I ended up selling my place because I just got into it with them so much that I was like, okay, I'm going to have a heart attack right now because I know what they're doing. I know it's not right. And I have, I can go to war with an attorney And at that time, also in the certain areas, attorneys don't want to pick up certain cases because everybody knows each other.
Yeah.
So I was like, I didn't even have anybody to help me at that time. So I was like, you know what? Before I have a stroke or whatever, I was like, I'm going to get out of it because I know what's being done. And once you know you're being screwed, you're not happy about that.
No, yeah, that's the thing, right? It's like, if you didn't read your bylaws and you didn't realize that certain things were important to you and now you can't do them because they're in your bylaws, they're outlined in your bylaws, you're going to be upset. And it's big money that you're spending here, right? Like, I don't care who you are. If you spent $50,000, $75,000, which is going to be rare in the North Coast, by the way, but if you spend $150,000, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, you certainly wouldn't know what you're getting into, right?
And also as an investor, like I lived in a building where one person owned more than 50% of the property in that building, the apartments. He built the building, whatever. And at one point I went to switch into a rental that was owned by an individual owner. And all of a sudden I go to park my car, and because it wasn't assigned parking, it was open parking. So I go to park my car and he's like, no, you can't park here. I was like, what do you mean? I'm renting an apartment from the owner. He said I can park here. He was like, no, only my people can park here, whatever. He changed the stuff as he went along.
Yeah.
And then I had to, I talked to the owner and I had to leave. I had to leave that property because I could not live there without parking. I couldn't park my car in the street. I couldn't do any of that. So with that being said, I moved into a unit. I paid them the security deposit. I had to get money back. There was a whole big argument between the owner and him and everything like that. And he would run around, and this was like in the COVID area. He would go around and he'd be like, today the pool's open till like 6 o'clock. Tomorrow's open till 8. He wouldn't like who was in the pool. He'd be like, pool closed, everybody get out.
Yeah, but let me just say, to that point, I've had this happen in one of my complexes too, where somebody who owns the majority of the units thinks that now they're the king, that they can do whatever they want. That being said, your bylaws do run those aspects. So he really shouldn't be able to run around like he's the king and change the pool hours. This should happen in your yearly assembly, right? Your owner's assembly.
Exactly.
All of these little rules that are like not outlined, that can be changed without 100% vote, that all of that needs to be done in a yearly meeting, right? Or they need to be enforced by your admin. A guy cannot just run around and be the king of a complex. You know what I mean?
I've seen it, yeah.
Yeah. But if you don't know your rights, and if the majority of the people in the building don't know their rights, then they think that this guy can just run around and be the king of the place, right?
Exactly. I was a renter, but if I was an owner there, I was like, well, thank God I don't own here, because I'd be like, okay, we're going to war today.
Yeah, but even the majority owner, because I have this instance going on right now where there's two people who are the majority owners, and they were treating it like it was their own little, private kingdom. But because I know my rights, I'm able to speak with the admin with a clear, conscience about how this is supposed to work. And I'm able to present her things that prove, that these people can't just be running around like they're the kings of the universe here.
Not a fun feeling.
No, not a fun feeling.
So we hope that kind of helps you guys out. Learn a little bit more about HOAs here. If you've been in an HOA in the States, it kind of applies almost the same thing because there's rules there, there's rules here.
Yeah.
In many ways, it's very similar.
Yeah. It's a similar concept. There's going to be the Dominican law is going to outline things maybe a little bit differently. And obviously, all of your bylaws, this is another thing I run into in the expat groups or even in my assembly meetings, like they have been like, well, this complex does it this way and this complex does it that way. Well, each individual complex is not going to run like the next complex. And that is because the developers were different and they made these rules and they registered these rules, right? So each individual complex has its own set of rules. The other thing is that these rules can be changed every year at the annual assembly.
Correct.
So, and this is one last thing, as it applies to like your yearly fees, this is something to keep in mind. Although your fees might be $200 this year, they could hike up to $300 next year, because if all the majority gets together and decides we need to put in 25 more security guards, for example, which is not going to be something that needs 100% vote. If the majority says we need 25 more security guards and we're going with this company, you got to pay for it. So you need to remember that just because your cost is $200 this year doesn't mean it can't go up to $300 next year, but it can also go down. It's just it's a fluctuating cost.
Right. What I owned, after I guess people got upset, they ended up adjusting it and it went down.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much it. I mean, at the end of the day, the maintenance on your property goes up everywhere. We know cost of living. If they do an increase in the minimum wage here on wages, then you're going to see an increase in your maintenance, because now staff costs, and the more staff you have, obviously the more staff you have per property, but your maintenance is going to go up. And that's everywhere else. I mean, I'm from New York, and they're usually on a well-run place. The maintenance went up, HOA, whatever, they went up. once every 5 years if it was run well.
And then another thing is that every year you're going to vote in your admin. Your admin should be making a presentation with your budget. They should be explaining your last year expenses, and they should be presenting something for the next year's budget. Anybody can put up a potential admin that can come in and give a presentation, by the way, for everybody to vote on. So you don't have to keep last year's admin just because it was last year's admin. If you find somebody that you like, that you want to bring in and present, and the majority votes on it, the admin can change. So that's another aspect of having a homeowners association. Just because the developer is managing it today doesn't mean they're going to be managing it 5 years from now.
And with that said, last thing, there are some complexes that are under construction that do not yet have an HOA.
Right.
The developer is still developing it. They're still in control of the entire project. You go at the project, if you like how it's being handled, if you like what it looks like, then you know what they're doing. And then eventually, when they finish their project, they pass it over to a homeowners association. So there are times that you might see a large community, but you're not going to see a HOA yet because the developer is controlling the project. And that's common. That's not like the same as one person owning 50%, because those usually tend to be, it's not like a developer slash, the way I'm talking about it, I see it as like the big developments, not like one guy who built 30 units and he kept 16 for himself just to cause it as a hobby. These people have interest in selling the property, making it better, making everything better for the people that live there, that buy there, because they run the entire place well, and then they'll hand it over to an HOA.
Yeah. Let me see. Is there anything else besides, okay, so you vote every year. You by law, you have to have an annual meeting. So that's that. This is one thing that all the owners in my complexes, my 2 complexes, didn't know. So if you don't know that, then now you know. So make sure that you figure out the Dominican law, check your bylaws, check your declaration. You're also entitled to know about the expenses at any time. You should be able to walk into the office and ask for a spreadsheet any moment. Yeah, and if you're buying from somebody and you want to know what the expenses are, then that person should be able to walk into the office at any moment, ask for a spreadsheet of the current expenses, the last 5 years expenses. The last thing I would say that you should get in addition to your, we're on last.
Triple, quadruple, ultra, mega last.
Okay, so the last, triple, quadruple, last is that,
This is weird, so we're just shooting like this, like we have no script or anything like that, just so you know. There's so much shit to cover sometimes.
Yeah, there is. But okay, those are the basics. If it comes back to me, then we'll add it in.
Or if you have any questions, drop it in the comments and she'll answer it, because she is the queen of the HOA.
Yeah.
And if you guys are looking to buy it here in Sosúa, reach out to us. Become our neighbor. Welcome home. Boom.
We're going to be so good at this.
I'm digging it. I dig it.
All right, let's just make sure. All right, we did 19